Now, going over to the political part podcast, Donald Trump to save us about $1,000 per vehicle with even more deregulation. This is brought to us thanks to thedrive.com, specifically Andrew Collins. And I know I covered this earlier this week, but there's a little bit extra detail. And again, this is such amazing, great news for the automotive community. I think it's worth talking about a little bit more. He says, quote, Trump is gutting fuel economy standards for new cars and huge CAF rollback. The Trump administration claims this move will reduce the cost of new cars by almost $1,000, but is not specified yet how. There's a picture of the Ford F-150, the most cliche truck for a reason. Most people buy them. Automatic transmission, though, how boring is that? Now they say, quote, President Trump and Secretary Sean Duffy, auto executives, and others addressed the nation from the White House to announce plans for rolling back near future automaker fuel economy standards set in place by the Biden administration. The American auto industry and the cars we can buy here in the coming years will be affected in a huge way. As a result, by the announcement, fleet fuel management averages for automakers will now total just 34.5 mile per gallon by 2031, rather than previously set 50.4 mile per gallon, which, yeah. They say corporate average fuel economy, or CAF standards, refer to an average mile per gallon rating on an automaker across all of its lineup. The idea is basically, if a brand makes a vehicle that gets a lot of fuel, it should make cars that are more efficient. Such standards have existed since the 1970s and were significantly updated during the totalitarian evil overlord Obama administration. Okay, I added that last part. But they rolled back during Trump's first term and even more made it more environmentally ambitious again during Biden's administration, which you debate if it's really good for the environment or not. They say under Trump's direction, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is proposing to reduce fuel economy requirements for the model years 2022 to 2031, making the CAF requirement 34 mile per gallon instead of the, again, 50.4. Which, again, one of the reasons these companies are making these, well, economically moronic things like EVs is to increase their fuel efficiency standards or averages. Same with tailpipe emissions. Again, that's one of the reasons you see less V8s. Americans, it's nothing more American than a V8 and a stick shift powertrain. Debatably a V10 stick shift, the V10 engine with a stick shift and a Dodge Viper. Debatably more. I don't know. But since it's where Ford almost had to pay $1 billion penalty, I believe it was in 2024, because their fleet average for fuel economy wasn't to the arbitrary number the government pulled out of a hat. And again, that cost gets pushed on the consumer. They have to make these engines more and more efficient. And it's one of those things where a lot of it is at the detriment to the consumer. Not just do they increase the cost of goods sold to the consumer with increased regulation in terms of safety and fuel economy, tailpipe emissions, but it also makes the products more disposable. The biggest offender would be the diesel engine, which used to be a bulletproof piece of Americana you put into a Jeep or a truck. I'm sorry, a truck. I think that's how you have to pronounce the word. And they're great. Then you got all the DEF fluid, which again, interestingly enough, all this bureaucratic, all these laws, they're just kneecapping honest Americans, hardworking taxpayers. Government vehicles, those trucks, they don't have any of that crap because they want reliability. That's why it went viral a couple months ago. You had a military base Ford truck, and they looked under the hood, they're like, oh yeah, there's no catalytic converters, there's no DEF, all that crap. Because again, the DEF is basically, not to get too technical, keep it conceptual. It's like your engine throwing up on itself, and it gums up the engine. Now again, in terms of the tailpipe emissions, that drops, but then you have to carry that DEF fluid. And you also, increases the cost and complexity of the vehicle, makes it less efficient, and it makes it so the engine won't last hardly at all. It becomes a disposable piece of junk, which I would argue, that's one of the reasons I don't like hybrids or EVs, they are disposable. Now that technology might change, I always have to have that caveat because tech does change. But I would rather have a good old Honda Civic with a stick shift and a good old 4 cylinders of glory and a turbo that'll last decades, as opposed to a disposable vehicle that'll last 8 to 12 years. Again, that's also better for the consumer. You actually have a product last that long, and Lord knows vehicles are already abhorrently expensive. A lot of people can barely afford them these days. Now, they continue saying, quote, as wild as those numbers sound, any changes to CAF regs at this point doesn't matter since the one big beautiful bill past summer eliminated penalties for automakers that missed targets, which, again, after they made that announcement, Toyota goes, you know what? The next Supra might just have a V8, which, again, if they had a V8 and a stick shift and a Supra, oh, now that would be awesome. If you get that reference, I'll die a little bit inside. Home Improvement, one of the best shows out there. And they say CAF changes will, however, make it more difficult to improve national fuel economy in the future. Oh, no. They say the government also wants to end some automakers' credits for fuel-saving features and eliminate credit trading among automakers, which would hurt Tesla because that's how they make a lot of money, is selling those credits to other manufacturers. Another thing I hate again, it hurts consumers, is a cylinder deactivation crap. That's where they squeeze a little bit better fuel economy out of the vehicle and a little bit better tailpipe emissions, but it destroys your engine. It is one of the worst things you can do. It destroys your reliability. I hate those stupid things. Cylinder deactivation crap is terrible. And that's a good example of de facto regulation, because the government didn't say you have to use cylinder deactivation. However, to hit these arbitrary numbers, they had to think of new technologies, and that was one of them, to the detriment to the U.S. consumer, especially bad at General Motors engines when they try to use that crap, as if they are unreliable enough as is. But that's another little bit of technology that's forced upon the consumer for these. And again, that's why I always tell people, the Biden administration wasn't technically banning the V8 engine. It was a de facto ban. Again, if you don't, these numbers are going to find you into oblivion. And yeah. Now, they also say, quote, Trump's messages revolves around the policy changing leading to reduced car prices for consumers. I guess thinking that there's automakers can charge less for cars since they'll no longer have to bother with the research, development, and pollution reduction. Well, again, also all the crap they have to bolt on. I was going to say, can we just get rid of catalytic converters too? I'm only partially kidding. They sound better and they used to get better. Yeah, I was going to say. Now they say, my guess is they'll be happy to see the development money and not bothered by reducing car prices, but the White House official claims as follows. They say, quote, if President Trump had done nothing, the Biden standards would have raised the average cost of new cars by nearly $1,000 relative to the cost under the standards announced today. President Trump's actions will save American families $109 billion in total over the next 5 years. By helping more Americans buy newer, safer vehicles, this reset is projected to save more than 1,500 lives and prevent nearly 250,000 serious injuries through 2050. Which, again, that would be great. And again, kind of tell people in terms of peak reliability, cars seem to have topped off. I want to say around maybe the 2000, 2006 era. You had enough modern stuff like, heated seats, maybe a USB to connect the phone for music. And there's enough tech to make it comfortable, but not detrimental where it's more unreliable. And then they introduced, especially under the Biden administration, they introduced radical new policies, radically increased the cost of goods sold to consumer, even more unreliable. That's one of the things ironically, I work in tech, mostly cybersecurity, but like when it comes to cars, excuse me, I really don't like more tech because, again, it increases complexity, cost of goods sold to consumer. And again, that's why he has so many recalls. Ford's had 138 recalls this year. Now, many of them were software and then, other areas too. But again, there's just more things that can break. Now, again, I know I'm one of those weirdos where, I'm okay with not having the latest and greatest widgets on the little tablets in front of your computer or your car, rather. But again, this is some great news. And again, the auto executives are usually pretty politically correct. They mostly smile when it comes to the administration, no matter who's in office, because they're scared to death about being regulated out of business. And the auto industry is one of the most regulated, I would argue, overregulated industries in the United States and global, as we've seen with the draconian evil EU. But again, I think this is great news for the consumer. Now, the real question is, how much change will happen quickly when, again, politically speaking, if, again, as this is a political issue, Democrats tend to love to increase cost of goods sold to consumer. If a Democrat wins the next presidential election, what if they just double? Let's say, oh yeah, we need the fuel economy to be 100 miles per gallon average. So then these companies will have to make pretty much nothing but EVs. And when you're making these factories, and again, the average life cycle for a vehicle is like, 8 to 10 years, and you're investing almost $1 billion when you start a new vehicle from scratch. That's a long roadway and a lot of uncertainty, which is why I hope, these car companies are lean enough to make these changes quickly. It'd be great if all the diesel trucks just ripped off that DEF crap like right now. But that's why I'm a little apprehensive in terms of how much change will we see immediately. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, try to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so click that button. I greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or comment. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback. Let me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.